Drama awaits, only on Echoes of Love. This is the second season of our story. You can find the first season in the previous videos. Our story begins with the hero, Seongji, a high school student, who will be strict with the psychiatrist he visits. He describes his psychological state to her, explaining that he constantly dreams of his friends, losing them one by one. The doctor responds, "Don't pressure yourself and try to focus on your studies. What's past is past, and you have no control over it." Here, Seongji speaks to her harshly, saying, "It was my mistake to even come to you," then grabs his belongings and heads straight to class, where the scent of candy fills the room. Although the students have always avoided Seongji, even in the classroom, keeping their distance, when he enters, the laughing students stop. They push the standing students to sit down and escort those sitting out of the room. Suddenly, a young man enters and collides with someone unintentionally, frightening the entire class, who think their classmate is dead. However, their classmate was very weak and polite. He quickly apologizes to Seongji, who looks at him indifferently before returning to his seat and resting. Meanwhile, his classmate continues working, carrying a bag full of milk and food. We learn that this person, no matter what he does at school, is constantly mocked by the bullies because he fears them. If he isn't around, they would mercilessly torment him and cause him psychological stress. We also discover that he has another important role, stealing his classmates' phones and handing them over to the bully leader. His name is Mang. When he has to get angry, he says, "There's no one left in class whose phone I haven't taken yet," adding, "You know my principals won't allow me to leave anyone with their phone. I have a quality, I must steal from everyone." As for our other classmate, Han, we learn that his name is Seongji. He is said to be a dangerous criminal, feared by everyone. Han was afraid of having his phone stolen so he wouldn't get beaten, but Mang becomes angry and shouts, "What's this? Afraid of getting hit? Come, I'll show you." He grabs him and starts hitting him. At this point, Han has no choice but to steal Seongji's phone. In this moment, Seongji realizes his phone is missing. Han becomes nervous and says, "I definitely didn't steal it, I don't steal." The second time, Seongji doesn't speak to him but forgives him, even though he is sure Han took his phone. When Han goes outside, Seongji follows him, trying to convince him he wasn't the thief. Seongji insists, "I'm not stupid. I know you took it and gave it to the bullies," yet forgives him again and moves on. We discover that Seongji's life outside of school is bleak and sad. He suffers from insomnia and cannot sleep without sleeping pills. Unfortunately, all his friends are gone except for one, Seohyu, who is in a hospital bed and still in a coma, as you may remember from season 1. The only thing Seongji can do is visit him, recording everything that happens to him daily. At school, he finds the bullies harassing Han. Seongji becomes angry and recalls the days when the bullies tormented his friends. He imagines himself wielding a sword and attacking them one by one but realizes it's just a dream. When they try to threaten him, they cannot defeat him. Mang finds himself scared and lets Seongji pass without approaching him. Han approaches Seongji and asks to be friends to protect himself from the bullies, but Seongji refuses, saying, "You've already become one of them. If you want to be my friend, you must rebel against them." At night, Seongji sees a group of bullies in front of the cyber cafe. Mang enters and tells them to bring their leader, whose name is Cheol, the neighborhood bully king. All the bullies bring him the stolen phones to sell. Mang tries to meet the bigger leader, Gentai, but Cheol refuses. The next morning, Han goes to school and breaks open the locker containing the stolen phones. He gathers them all and returns them to their owners. Mang becomes furious and confronts him, but Han is unafraid and challenges him. He tries to kick him, causing Mang to fall. Seongji intervenes, trying to stop the fight and reason with him. Mang, who only knows violence, doesn't understand and strikes Seongji quickly. Seongji falls but gathers his strength and keeps watching Mang, who becomes scared and asks, "Are you unaffected or what?" Meanwhile, the athlete student speaks to his team, saying that the leader, Bako, will not return to school and that he will only act as a replacement. Shu becomes angry and goes straight to Mang to take revenge. When he tries to attack him, he sees Seongji dodging the blows and is amazed, causing Mang to stop and shout, "Stop bullying the students." Since Bako won't return, Mang leaves the classroom. Shu tries to get to know Seongji, but Seongji ignores him and takes Han to treat him after being beaten with a stick. Han refuses to go to the nurse because he knows Mang and his friends bullied him. If the nurse finds out, she would file a complaint, and Mang would become angry and seek revenge. Han's friends, all weak and kind, enter. Meanwhile, Seongji goes downstairs to check cleanliness and finds a group of students gathering. He hears them talking about him and asks what they know. They start talking and explain why Mang fears Han. They asked about Seongji and found that he has a strong reputation from his old school. He was also a criminal and dominant, and a friend of one of his friends had expelled him from that school. No other school accepted him except theirs. But Suk doesn't believe it and tells them, "Don't talk about my friend like that, because no one knows the truth," and informs them that he is the biggest liar in this school. The news reached Mang, and he appeared annoyed, because he had indeed been afraid of Seongji. Adding Suk's stance to the mix, things at school began to take shape. Meanwhile, Han followed Seongji, and before heading home, he gave him a lot of medicine, saying, "These pills will help you sleep." Noticing that Seongji suffered from insomnia, couldn't sleep at night, and had to catch up on sleep at school. At this point, Seongji decided to take the sleeping pill so it would take effect and help him rest. From that moment, a simple friendship began between them. For Han, it was a safe haven, because he was certain that no one would be able to bully Seongji. Suddenly, the school bully leader arrived, sitting among them as if nothing had happened the previous day. He tried to talk and bring up any topic. We understand that his goal was to attract Suk's attention. Seongji arrived on Suk's side, who kept watching, surprised at how Chris, Seongji, and Han behaved. Later, Mang lured Han into a room to talk, taking advantage of Suk and his friends who had left the maintenance area. When they entered the maintenance room, the atmosphere was bad and uncomfortably tense, and Mang began taking revenge on Suk, destroying awards and everything around. At this moment, Seongji noticed that Han had not come to school. When the teacher asked about him, he paid no attention. But Seongji started suspecting that something was wrong. Even when he reached him, Han did not answer his questions. Then Mang ran to him and said he saw Seongji dragging Han and hitting him, claiming it had happened in the clubroom where they were training. When Seongji went to the clubroom, he found it completely messy and neglected. It turned out that Mang had hit Han and locked him in a locker. A friendly classmate approached Suk and told him that Seongji had sent him, lying and saying he would join Mang's gang. Suk became angry and went straight to confront Seongji, his anger increasing when he found his room completely trashed. Meanwhile, Han was with Seongji on the way and tried to avoid taking the shortcut, which contained a tunnel full of bullies who would have attacked him. But Seongji refused, saying, "I'll go the way I choose." Suk stopped them and asked Seongji to apologize for what happened in his room, but Seongji refused, saying, "I won't apologize because I didn't do anything. And if you want to fight, fine." Suk asked, "Do you want me to fight someone over the death of your closest friend?" For the first time, Seongji exploded and the fight began. He threw his bag and grabbed his stick, trying to hit him. Suk dodged at the last moment, and they went into combat. Seongji got injured in his shoulder. At this point, Mang and his friends intervened. Seongji and Suk realized the odds were against them, while Mang laughed at them. Mang went straight for Seongji and started hitting him, while his gang attacked Suk. Despite his strength, there were too many, and he couldn't control them all. Mang grabbed a stick and struck Seongji with it, until a distant voice called, "Enough, I've arrived." Bako appeared, and all the bullies feared him. Mang tried to calm things, throwing the stick and claiming Suk started the fight, but Bako ran toward Mang and hit him with a ball on the head to stun him, causing his gang to flee upon seeing Bako. Bako then bent down and tried to get to know Seongji, but, as usual, did not punish them and forgave them. Suk tried to ask for forgiveness, realizing his misunderstanding. Everyone returned to school after Bako's long absence. We know that Bako is not the team leader, but he earns love and respect from everyone at school, while all the bullies fear him. Afterward, Bako went to speak with friends he hadn't seen in a long time, especially Suk. They started laughing and playing a little, until Seongji and Han joined them, after the principal demanded they face reality and scolded them. Someone had reported them to the principal, saying they were the cause of chaos in the tunnel. The principal approached to assign them a volunteer task as punishment. Bako let Suk and Seongji apologize to the principal but did not clarify that the bullies started the fight. When Seongji left, he spoke to Bako, saying, "Try to stay away from me and my friends." He tried to walk alone, but Bako took control, played lightly with his hair, then went to play basketball. At this moment, Han began talking to Seongji about their territorial system, where gangs control multiple schools. Their sole leader is Gentai, who controls a large number of schools, except the one they attend, because Bako protects it. For this reason, the gang could not dominate the school, and the students like Bako, except for the bullies who try to challenge him. At night, Mang went to the Union Gang headquarters, took the officials, and collected the phones that hadn't been delivered. He then went to meet the leader, Gentai, who had been waiting for him, and told him he would receive a large sum of money to recover the phones that hadn't been handed in. Afterwards, Gentai called Cheol and asked him to gather detailed information about Seongji, who he was, what he did, and whether the rumors about him were true. Meanwhile, the group carried out the volunteer work assigned by the principal and grew closer. Seongji began feeling that they somewhat resembled his friends. He entered the bathroom to clean his clothes and suddenly found Cheol in front of him, whom he didn't know. Tension escalated quickly, and a fight broke out. Cheol noticed that Seongji was very strong, not what they had expected, and said before leaving, "We'll meet again, but next time, you won't escape my grasp." As he left, Bako appeared. Cheol tried to provoke him, speaking about the weakness of his men, referring to Seongji. Bako became angry and immediately went to Seongji to check on him, finding him unharmed. At the same time, the prestigious high school was holding a graduation party. The principal praised the top student, Gentai, who was also the Union Gang leader. In the morning, he led the class as a Mafia boss, and after school, Gentai went to collect money from the phones he sold, while Mang arrived with his gang, vowing revenge. At first, they didn't know who he was, but he began striking them one by one, and anyone who got in his way fell unconscious. Then he moved to the place where he had been, ordering everyone who opposed him to be hit, saying, "If I see you with the gang again, I'll kill you." Meanwhile, Bako took his friends and led them to the restaurant for dinner. During these events, he began recounting the adventures he had experienced at school when he wasn't there. Bako was very happy because now the students stood up to the bullies and weren't afraid of them, like Han. For this reason, he called Seongji and asked him to come out immediately to meet them, but Seongji refused, saying, "I don't want you to call me again." At that moment, Seongji went to visit his friend in the hospital. Suddenly, Cheol appeared and took him, saying, "Grab me before we go in and kill your friend." Seongji had no choice but to enter into a fight with him. Cheol took Seongji to a place filled with gangs. It was the headquarters of the gang leader Gentai. At first, his friends thought he would fight Cheol, but they found him at the entrance of Gentai's room, asking for permission to enter. When Seongji entered, he found Gentai sitting and studying. When he tried to speak, Gentai said, "Wait a little until exams are over." But Seongji swore, "Look, focus with me. I don't want to see you or your gang again, and I ask you to stay away from my friends, especially those weak in class." Gentai replied, "Agreed. I won't approach your new friends or the weak, but on the condition that you stay away from Bako and his friends." Seongji agreed. Seongji had thus given his answer on the matter, making it clear that being close to Bako could be the worst thing that could happen to him. So he decided to act, separate them, and create trouble at Bako's father's shop, so the police would quickly call Bako. He would then discover that some minors had attacked the shop and stolen adult drinks, and Bako's father faced accusations of giving alcohol to minors. One of the youths told Bako that the leader Gentai had planned this operation and asked to meet him. Bako called Gentai and informed him that the game between them would be revealed. The next day, Bako went to school, anxious. He knew Gentai would try to target his relatives, especially after meeting them the previous night. He told them, "I won't let any problem happen again." Han rushed to Seongji and explained that Bako didn't mean for them to be separated, but Seongji refused to respond, saying, "I want to be alone and don't want to get to know anyone." They noticed he was sad and lonely. As they left school, 3 people studying nearby started yelling at them. It turned out they were members of Gentai's gang, watching them. Seongji ignored them and continued on his way, while Han was alone on the path. When Bako learned what had happened, he realized there was a problem to solve and intended to confront Gentai. At that moment, the 3 gang members were following Han and Seongji, and when they approached the tunnel, a conflict broke out. Suk realized someone was following from behind, so he attacked them, injuring 2 badly in their legs and blinding 1 in an eye. He told Han to escape, striking 2 of the gang members while the others chased him. He ran so fast, slamming his legs into the ground to scatter them, then hid. Afterwards, he tried calling Bako for help, but his phone was off. He contacted his friend Seongji. When he didn't respond, he sent a message, but Seongji didn't understand. He called again, reassuring him that the gang hadn't arrived yet. He just wanted to ensure Han got home safely or whether the gang had attacked. During their conversation, they noticed the 2 were still being followed. Seongji heard the sound of fighting and realized his friends were in danger, so he ran to find them. Meanwhile, Bako went to Gentai's gang headquarters, finding a group of bullies refusing to let him in. He grabbed a ball and hit them, then entered to face Gentai, who was sitting and studying. He threw his books on the ground, and they began talking. It became clear that Gentai was doing all this to lure Bako and bring the gang under his control, but Bako refused. Gentai tried to provoke Bako, saying his friends were now at the mercy of his men. Bako ran to save them, but Gentai's gang waited at the door. Choco and his followers kept striking non-stop, but Bako was unstoppable. Anyone in his way retreated. Gentai approached and ordered his gang to clear the path for Bako. Bako laughed and said, "You're weak. You only came out to save your gang from being beaten, and that's why I'll take control of them." He then rushed to rescue his friends. Meanwhile, Seongji was shouting, trying to find them. He managed to locate them because he noticed one of Cheol's men was live streaming. He saw the open door and entered, spotting his friends. At that moment, he became furious and swore to Cheol that he would take revenge for him and his friends. Grabbing his stick, he charged into the fight, trying to attack Cheol, but discovered he was very strong and managed to trap Seongji's hands with a pen. They continued exchanging blows. Seongji then grabbed a vase and hit him on the head, taking advantage of a distraction. He attacked from behind, striking Cheol's legs, applying pressure to his leg injuries, and continued fighting blow by blow. Soon, he would begin delivering his blows with full force, managing to grab him and start crushing him. Just before landing the finishing strike, he realized the situation, lowered his head, and hit the wound in his legs, continuing to strike until 2 of them fell unconscious. At that moment, the sound of police sirens was heard, and Bako was with them, arriving accompanied by police officers. He ran quickly to Seongji to check on him. Here, Seongji remembered, while watching Bako train and hit Han, how he defended himself, how Bako shouted at him and scolded him, saying his movements were slow. Seongji said, "It's okay. Get up now and show us your skills." But Bako replied that he no longer trained with anyone, saying that he had once trained a friend long ago, but ultimately regretted it and decided not to train anyone again. Seongji then said he had been like Bako, as he once had a friend who taught him martial arts long ago, but he regretted learning those skills because his friend was now in a coma in the hospital. At that moment, Seongji snapped out of his memories and found himself asleep at Bako's house, with Bako speaking sternly to him. Seongji replied, enough of the fighting and hitting. This was because if they continued fighting, they would remain at war with those bullies, possibly lose their friends, and all of them might die. This affected Bako deeply, to the point that he called Gentai and told him he was willing to accept his loss. Gentai was shocked and didn't know what to say. Bako smiled and said, "This is the word you've been waiting to hear for a long time. Now you've heard it, and I admit I lost and am ready to face anything." In return, he asked Gentai to stay away from his friends and loved ones. At that moment, the wound was treated, and he left the police station, finding himself waiting. He immediately went to the gang headquarters and asked them, "What did you tell the police?" They were shocked by his words. He said, "Didn't you ask if I was okay? I'm injured, and you're asking what I said to the police?" His friends were worried about him, but he remained very cold toward them. They continued asking what he said to the police, which made him very angry. He told them he had closed the matter with the police, said he would no longer work with them, and asked them not to cause problems again. Thus, he withdrew from his gang. The next day, he left school for a bit and saw two people waiting for him. They asked, "Is everything okay?" and invited him to ride with them because the head of the Mafia wanted to speak with him. He said, "It's fine. We'll talk shortly," which annoyed them a little. One got out to hit him, but Bako dodged the blows and returned the ball. Then the second got out and tried to strike, but Seongji confronted them together, not letting anyone test his strength. He ran toward them and said he would call the boss to see what was going on. Meanwhile, Seongji was heading to school and found Bako with Han, all waiting for him and welcoming him. I felt extremely excited watching him get involved in Seongji's affairs. While walking, Bako came near him and finally convinced him to join in their play. Seongji agreed, went down to join their basketball game, and they all laughed and played together joyfully. As usual, Bako was very enthusiastic, talking with them, assuring them they were his friends, and he would hide nothing from them. Then, a call came from the police department, and Seongji's expression changed. He apologized to them and said he had to leave immediately to check on what was happening. He ran and found that the kids who had caused trouble with their father had changed their statements to the police, admitting they were minors and had been given drinks, which implicated Bako's father. He was arrested. When Seongji arrived, he found his father on the ground and the boys away from him, confirming his safety. I was angry and decided to take a little revenge. He found a message explaining that this was the cause of everything. He then went after those youths and delivered the punishment they deserved. Afterward, he went to his gang and told them not to approach Bako. Then he went to the headquarters, where the gang of the big boss was waiting. The boss's assistant was in the office. Seongji approached boldly and asked him to leave the office, but the assistant got angry, smashed everything, and said a police officer had entered, which benefited the gang's interests. If Seongji tried to interfere, he couldn't imagine what would happen. At that moment, Seongji went home and found his mother worried. She said, "I know you've been skipping school, and your level is very low." She decided to take him to a school abroad, saying, "We'll leave together, and we'll allow this in Korea," but he refused, saying he wanted to stay. He covered his face and cried all day. She said, "Everything that happened to you last year with your friends was because of my behavior, because I was nervous and always distant, which caused him to be bullied and lose control." She asked him to travel with her without problems and live together, learning to cope with everything they had gone through. He felt guilty for making his mother feel that way. Meanwhile, Bako was very worried about what had happened and didn't want to go to school because he feared his friends might be in danger, especially after his classmates told him he was a criminal, which was after he had beaten the kids who carried out the plan. But his father was nervous, and the matter escalated, prompting Bako to run away from home because he didn't want to continue his studies. Bako didn't know where to put his head and felt guilty for everything happening to his friends because of him. Suddenly, Gentai called, saying they were still waiting for an answer to his question, whether it was about his family or someone in his gang. Eventually, Bako had to agree to join them. He went to a bar, found a young man, asked for his name, collected him, and confronted them. Bako got angry, struck him until he fell, and gave the phone to speak with Gentai, but it was cut off in his face. This was his first escape in the gang. Despite the success, he felt unsettled, so he gave the young man money to fetch some medicine from the pharmacy and let him leave. Meanwhile, Seongji began filling out the file for the school he would travel to for his studies. He found his friends waiting at the door and asked him to come out and play, also asking for forgiveness if they had upset him. But the problem was that anyone calling Bako would interrupt them, so he couldn't face his friends. Finally, he went to Gentai's headquarters, where he was received as if he were one of the gang. As for Seongji, he was preparing to travel with his mother when Han suddenly called him, telling him he wasn't alone, that everything that had happened had not been in vain, and that they all trusted him. At that moment, his confidence returned, and he began to cry, speaking to his mother and telling her that he would not travel, and that he would return to continue his life with the friends he loved. The next day, Seongji went to school and told his friends that they needed to stop fighting and calm Bako as well. Meanwhile, in the gang, bullying of Bako continued, so he caught the offenders and intimidated them. Soon after, Gentai called him and gave him money for the mission he had completed. Bako took the money, though he was concerned for his own safety, and began recalling the day he first met Gentai. It became clear that Bako had been the one to teach Gentai martial arts. Yes, he had been his childhood friend who taught him combat skills, and since then, he refused to teach anyone else, seeing that they used these skills for revenge and to strike many innocent people. Seongji took his friends and went to Bako's house, where they met his father and tried to speak with him. But Bako told them that his father had asked him to stay in place and not come to him because he didn't expect to hear this at home and would come out. Seongji said to him, "Your son is strong, and everyone respects and values him at school." His father then dismissed them, thinking he himself was a monster. Sung told them that he had known Bako for a long time, and that his father had always been nervous and used to hit him when he was young. They hurried to the bully, knowing the corruption in the union, and began telling them how the gang exploited people for money laundering. They had many companies under the same name used solely for laundering money, like bars and restaurants. They had a company selling stolen goods and reselling them, and all gang members earned a lot of money. That's how the gang expanded, and anyone who wanted to work with them joined. Mang began laughing at them when he realized they intended to take revenge for their friend, but he got excited and decided to join them. He ordered Seongji's friends not to move or act without consulting him, saying he had a plan, and if they acted now, they would have to fight. He didn't want to lose any of them again. Bako took the money he earned and went to put it in his father's house, but he was shocked when Gentai sent him a picture of a luxury motorcycle and asked him to go steal it. Meanwhile, Seongji went straight to Gentai's headquarters, where he discovered that Gentai had been the one to beat his friend, and they wanted his approval. Seongji didn't express this to them and told them he wanted to meet Gentai face to face. They tried to intimidate him and left him waiting, but Han couldn't wait any longer, and they managed to locate the stolen goods, waiting for Bako until the right moment arrived. Sunk began calling Bako, but he didn't answer, which angered him. He tried to break the door, confident that Bako wouldn't enter, so he and Han would be able to break through and get inside. When they entered, they found a large quantity of materials and Bako's belongings in a room full of important documents. They destroyed the room and went inside to see what it contained. At that moment, Gentai went to his headquarters and told his men to leave, sitting down to speak with Seongji face to face. Seongji asked, "A top student like you, why are you doing all this?" Gentai replied, "I'm tired of this talk that stirs conscience, and wanted to show them a video of Sung Han, telling them that they were now in his headquarters and that his gang would directly take care of matters. He didn't allow them to leave except through fighting, and whoever came out victorious would be him. At that moment, Seongji was sent out and told to hurry to save his friends. Bako tried to deal with Gentai, telling him he was no longer afraid of his threats, and that if anyone approached his friends, he would defend them. Gentai tried to hit Bako, but he was struck hard enough to fall twice before him, then left and departed. Han and Seongji found a very important file, but when they tried to leave, they found the gang inside, and all they saw was light. The strikes began. At the last moment, Han jumped and pushed them, trying to defend him. Seongji became furious, grabbed a metal rod, and started swinging it. When they were distracted, they managed to escape together, but the gang continued to pursue them, determined not to let them go. At this moment, Seongji ran after them to save them, when a call came from the hospital. The doctor informed them that his friend's condition was critical, that his heart rate was high, and he was between life and death. They couldn't reach any family except via his phone number, so he was the only one who called to check on his condition. Seongji stopped, not knowing where to go, whether to his friend in mortal danger or to save his friends captured by the gang. Suddenly, he saw a car in front of him, making it clear he was between life and death. Han and Seongji hid from the gang, with Han's idea being to hide under the car. Unfortunately, the gang spotted them, dragged them out, and grabbed each one, beginning to beat them. They started hitting them until they stole the file. Another was defeated in the market and lost consciousness. Finally, Bako arrived and grabbed the gang members, gathering them all. One came directly on a motorcycle and hit Bako on the head with a metal rod. When he tried to strike again, Bako prepared himself and hit him with a powerful punch, sending the motorcycle flying. They then grabbed him and tried to choke him, but they couldn't finish it because Sunk intervened at the last moment. At that moment, another call came from the hospital, informing them that Seongji's friend had been seriously injured and was now in intensive care, with his mother sitting beside him, devastated and crying. The three remained seated, waiting, until his mother left the room. They told her that they were his friends from school and that they would stay by his side until he woke up. As for his mother, she thanked them and asked them to go on their way, because from the day she met them, she had felt at ease with them. At that moment, they realized that a page had been stolen from the file, and that missing page could land them all in jail. She told them they had to either retrieve that page or face the consequences later. At that moment, he returned home feeling sad, and finally found his father waiting for him. His father welcomed him warmly and happily, and they had breakfast together. For the first time, Bako noticed that his father cared about him, and he gave him his money. His father said, "You have a friend with a long tongue but weak, and he has never bothered you," referring to Seongji. At that point, Bako couldn't hold it and cried all day, feeling guilty, because everything that had happened was his fault. At that moment, he thought about the page stolen from the file and sat down to decide what to do with it. Then he decided to be brave, went straight to the police, and handed them the page. But the officer told him it wasn't sufficient evidence, assuring him that the matter would be investigated and that no decisive action would be taken in the case. So he decided to steal the page back and flee. He didn't leave the police station because if he did, gang members would be waiting to capture and torture him, then take the page and burn it. Afterward, he called Gentai, telling him he had copied a photo of the page and asking him to delete it if he had photographed it. But Han was brave and told him he wouldn't delete the image until his friends could live in peace. The gang then tried to attack him, but he stood his ground and defended his friends, impressing them. He confronted Gentai's men one by one. Later, he called Bako to come with him and Han, marking the first time he had done something good in his life. He admired the relationship between Bako and his friends, which was completely different from what he had seen with Gentai. At that moment, Gentai was shocked by Chul's actions, but the greater shock came when the assistant of the big Mafia boss arrived with his men to attack Gentai's gangs, telling him the situation was worsening and that if their trace was discovered, everyone would go to jail. They warned him this was his final warning, and if they had to return again, it would be his last day alive. Meanwhile, Han fought alongside his friends, informing them of everything that had happened, and they thanked him for his courage. Bako, encouraged by this, went to his father, took a microphone, and went straight to the school where Gentai studied. Using the loudspeaker, he addressed Gentai outside, saying the fight would be between him and Gentai only, and that if Bako's school won, he would take control of all the gangs. The challenge was now clear between them. At the school, everyone was astonished. Most of Bako's friends couldn't believe what was happening, but Seongji began broadcasting through the school radio, recounting everything that had occurred. He told them the challenge was now between Bako and Gentai, urging his friends to join the school to support Bako. Gentai sat alone, scared and terrified, and even his gang began doubting his ability to face Bako. At this moment, Bako went to check on Seol-jae, and his mother recalled the conversation they had the night before. She took him to see Seol, explaining everything that had happened a while ago and how she had feared for her son. She told him the doctor had confirmed the accident was minor and that Seol was now fine. He spoke with her until he confirmed Seol had awakened from the coma and wanted to ensure his friend in intensive care was safe. At that moment, Bako felt overwhelming joy and collapsed with happiness, saying, "Relax. I went to check on your friend Suhyo, made sure he's okay, and his mother is with him, he's stable." Seongji then went out to his friends, telling them he was happy to be reunited and that they were his closest friends. Since he had agreed to peace, they had to resolve their conflict with Gentai. The game began, and he went to seek their help to weaken the Union gang, especially since Chul knew all their tactics and schemes. Chul asked him, "Why should I help you this way, especially after remembering that Seongji injured my leg on the first day of their fight?" Seongji replied, "The gang must be dismantled, and when the police arrest them, we'll inform you that you were present with them." Chul agreed to cooperate, on the condition that they would not report him to the police. They then had main post notices in the gang's network, spreading rumors and causing problems. The gang began losing control over each other. The day before Bako and Gentai's fight, they assessed their abilities and made a plan. They visited the orphanage, where Seongji regularly donated a large sum. This time, he wanted to donate part of his money, but the orphanage director initially refused, claiming she couldn't take responsibility for the source and suspected it was suspicious. After persistent persuasion, she finally agreed. Then they went to meet the gang, finding everyone gathered at the location where the confrontation with Song-jae's school would take place. That day, it was raining, and they saw Hank coming alone, realizing the entire school was waiting for them, all in uniforms and displaying their school emblem. Before entering the tunnel, they found Hank with his friends, who told them he would join due to loyalty to their school. Although Hank had not forgiven them for the previous bullying, they now needed his help. Seongji, from a distance, went to retrieve Chul and gave him a USB containing all the gang's files, saying, "Use it if you get out of here safely." They had left a strong gang member to protect him. Meanwhile, the students went straight to Bako to thank him for his bravery, but when they didn't find him, they feared for him. When they tried calling, his phone was off, letting them know something had happened. Bako, however, told them they must continue. This was because it was necessary to have a plan from Gentai, and they had to go find out what that plan was. At this point, the fight began between them, and the scene was blazing with light, with the attackers outnumbering the ones fleeing. As for Seongji, he had lost consciousness, and was separated from the grip of that Patoos who had been choking him. A battle broke out, from which Seongji emerged unharmed, and they realized that Han had intervened to save him. However, one gang member was still alert and continued fighting Seongji, landing a powerful blow that knocked him to the ground. Seongji, enraged, retaliated and struck him. Meanwhile, Han could not move again and asked Seongji to lead the team at that moment, but another gang member blocked his path. Meng's role was limited to words only, He didn't strike anyone and simply ate the stick, but even so, he put an effort with them. Then came the decisive moment, the fight between Bako and Gentai. The least that could be said about this fight was that it was legendary. They both possessed the same martial arts skills, had been friends since childhood, and each knew the other's weaknesses. Bako began speaking to Gentai, saying, "You developed your skills since the last time I taught you martial arts. Add a little of your own style." He focused on Gentai's shoulder and began striking it, causing serious damage. The question was, who would fall first? Before the fight concluded, Gentai had taken control of the school. Finally, Seongji appeared carrying a metal bar, ready to fight, and faced Gentai in another confrontation. He focused on Gentai's legs, striking them with the metal in his hands, literally destroying Gentai's legs. But Han intervened, grabbed Seongji, and scolded him. Seongji endured it because he was following the plan with Bako. At last, everyone understood the strategy. Seongji sacrifices himself to awaken Bako, who then strikes Gentai and regains control. Thus, their school won, the gang union disbanded, and everyone departed. Finally, Hanji met up with them, and they all boarded the bus. Exhausted, they were finally able to live a peaceful life free from bullying and gangs, and even Mango became the school's caretaker. Seongji and his friends grew closer to one another. After a while, Seongji received a call from the hospital, informing him that his friend in intensive care had awakened, his health was good, and he would be able to leave that day. He rushed there with his friends, and upon arrival, they found their friend resting in the room. He greeted Seongji and his friends, and with that, the story came to an end. Subscribe for more.